All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday morning, beginning of April, beginning of second quarter for a lot of you. Really glad you're joining us here on a Wednesday morning. My name is Matt Heinz from Heinz Marketing, and this is the first of what hopefully, guys, will be a few of these that we do in LinkedIn Live over the course of the next few months, specifically focused on enterprise marketing issues. And I want to thank and welcome in Jim Williams, who's the CMO of Uptempo, excuse me. And just thank you to Uptempo for, sort of championing sort of this stream of enterprise content. Kind of coming out of, Jim, the CMO Coffee Talk group has been around for a few years, about 2,300 heads of marketing, CMOs, largely B2B companies. Lots of great conversations, and we've just doubled down on the conversations in the enterprise, knowing, Jim, that enterprise organizations have some unique challenges. So, Jim, thanks very much for being here. Thanks for sponsoring this.
You're entirely welcome, man. I'm delighted to be here and big fan of what you've done with CMO Coffee Talk community.
It's been amazing. I mean, what started, just sort of serendipitously at the beginning of the pandemic is about 2,300 members. We do Friday morning sessions every week. We are doing meetups now on a monthly basis with the enterprise marketers and starting to see if we can do some of these on LinkedIn as well. And the goal with these would be just to sort of have a conversation with some enterprise marketers. If you're watching this live, if you're listening to this live, you can be part of this as well. We very much look forward to your comments and feedback and questions for our topic today. And yeah, the goal is just to sort of get some enterprise marketers on board, just talk about what's working, what's not, the challenges. And Debbie, so excited to have you here. We got Debbie Umbach. She's the Vice President of Corporate Marketing for Dynatrace. And maybe just have you give a quick introduction to yourself before you start, including how a systems engineer for the University of Virginia ends up running marketing at a bunch of enterprise companies.
I know. It's been a crazy career journey. So happy to be here with you, Matt and Jim. I love the coffee talk. I can't believe it's been going, it started during the pandemic. I thought it might end after the pandemic, and it's just, flourishing. So lots of fun. But yeah, I always loved math and science. And so I made my way into engineering, and systems engineering is more a lot of computer science. And so I ended up moving into tech and doing IT consulting. And then I got into project management and thought, I really want to move on to the business side and product management. Mm-hmm. So I got my MBA and worked at Akamai, which is actually, I'm based in the Boston area, is a pretty big company here now. And kind of worked at a lot of different startups, made my way into product marketing and eventually all of marketing. My first VP of marketing position was at BitSite, which is a local cybersecurity company. And now I'm here at Dynatrace, running a team of about 60 people in corporate marketing, and it's a great time.
Love it. Well, we were, as we all joined, just made sure our links worked before the session. We were talking about commutes. I know, Jim, you and Debbie are sort of in the Boston area and talking about, some day commutes are better than others. Sounds like Tuesdays are rough because, most people that are going in part-time are going in on Tuesdays. But this is a challenge for every organization, and I would imagine, no different for enterprise. What I'm curious, Debbie, for your team as well as for Dynatrace overall, like how are you guys thinking about and sort of managing sort of workplace, who, where, what?
Yeah. With a global organization, we've got about 4,000 employees spread out really all over. And we put in place last year, maybe 18 months ago, a Dynatrace work model where we're offering people the flexibility. There are some people that are fully remote. The majority of people are flex office, which is 1 or 2 or 3 days a week. If you're 3 or more, then you have a assigned place. And then otherwise it's like a hoteling concept. But it works really well. Most of my team that's local comes in on Tuesdays, and some people Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But you're working virtually. It's really a hybrid environment. Just like we're running hybrid events now with our customers, mm-hmm. It's hybrid meetings, and you just have to make sure you have really good technology so that people that are remote don't feel, left out. And I think we've kind of solved that challenge recently. The pandemic accelerated it, and it's actually been working really, really well. And I like the flexibility because I like to kind of have my coffee and work early in the morning and then work out and then kind of start taking meetings around 9. And going into the office means I have to do that all earlier.
Does it change at all? This is, I guess, a question for you, both of you, Debbie and Jim. Does it change who you hire? Does it change the attributes of who you're looking at that you think will flourish in an environment like that?
Well, I mean, I didn't meet anyone in person when I joined in March of 2021, and it wasn't a big deal, actually. I thought I would feel it strange that I never met anyone in person and I joined this company, but I think people have gotten accustomed to working remotely. I think it's harder for people that are earlier in their careers.
Yeah.
My daughter's actually at University of Virginia now too. She is a second year, and for an internship, she really wants to be in person. So, our sales development reps want to be in the office. They're in like 3 days a week, so that they can hear from each other and learn. But if you've been working for a long time, and we've got the video now, and for us, the norm is having the video on. Of course, if you need to have it off or want to have it off, that's fine. But you do have that, interpersonal, that interaction. And at the end of the day, like, it's about setting the right vision and goals so people know where they're focusing, where they're working on, and you don't need to babysit people. No one wants to be babysat.
No, that's true. Jim, curious your thoughts on this too.
Yeah, so we are actually we've just gone fully remote or fully virtual. For me personally, somehow by some twist of fate, I always was remote for most of my career. I worked for companies that were elsewhere, and so for me, I just got kind of used to it, like tapping on the video saying, "Hey, I'm here in the meeting as well," But I think it is. It still presents challenges. All three in office, hybrid and fully remote present challenges in their own way. Totally agree with you, Debbie. If you're young in career, I think back to my career and my learning moments, the moments where I advanced my career, I learned something new, made a key relationship, learned about a colleague, built a mentor type relation. All of those occurred in person, and very few of them occurred when I was on a remote call. And I think that's a real challenge for people that are getting started in their career. So you just got to be mindful of that. And our decision was, do the same thing. We had offices, and everyone says, yeah, I definitely want the option to come in. But then when you actually look at the data, they're not coming in. It doesn't make sense. I would rather just put that money towards a travel budget to have teams get together once a quarter or once every 6 months. That seemed to make more sense for us.
Yeah, I mean, we're a very small company, less than 20 people, but we face some of these challenges as well. We identified when we decided to go fully remote, we said there's 3 things specifically that I think we have to replace that naturally happen in an in-person culture. Right? One is just team building, just building relationships with each other. 2 is collaboration and brainstorming, and 3 is sort of mentoring and sort of that peer-to-peer, like learning through osmosis. And one of the things that we've done, and I've seen a lot of other companies do as well, is more formally create a mentor program, and including a peer-to-peer mentor program, just to create an environment for people to chat with each other. We use a tool called Donut in Slack. It literally is called Donut, and it randomly pairs people up to have one-on-ones and to have casual. And you're encouraged to just like, hey, don't talk about work. Just find out what each other likes and to do. And it's those things. Do they fully replace being in the lunch table for half an hour? No, but you know what? It actually does achieve some of those checks. Would love anyone. Hey, look, anyone watching, if you're a manager, if you're a direct contributor, if you have a perspective or opinion or even a rant about workplace, going back to work, back to the office, what your office is asking for, etc., let us know. Would love to feature your comment in the show. Debbie, back to you. I think there's a lot of market turbulence right now, a lot of things happening in the market, logical, rational, otherwise, that are making it really difficult right now for a lot of companies to operate. We see a lot of headlines from small companies, venture-backed companies. Give us a perspective of what that looks like at an enterprise level. Are you feeling that turbulence as well? Have you seen internal economic decisions different? Are you seeing external selling conditions differently? And how do you adjust to that?
Yeah, well, what we sell is observability, which is essentially helping companies keep their infrastructure and applications up and running. Our vision is a world where software works perfectly. So it's actually quite important for our customers. There's a great need for this kind of solution. So we have been lucky enough that our business is, first of all, growing, but also profitable. And we're not had to do cuts that some people have had, layoffs. So I'm very grateful for that. But it doesn't mean we still need to be smart about what we're doing and where we're spending. And certainly some of the broad, out-of-home advertising initiatives we had running, we stopped doing those. We are doing some out-of-home that is around a few major industry events. So like AWS reInvent is really important for us. So really kind of being there where our target audience is really important. So more concentrated, more focused, and then you can see the results better. So that's an example where we did have to reduce, but on the people front, we're still growing, but we're growing smart, because you need to have a good business case when you're adding somebody to the team and full time. We have done some contract to perm positions, which is really nice because we'll grow the hours over time. Yeah. And if they're interested in full time, we do like to operate that way. So that's been helpful.
You used the word a couple times there, and I want to sort of double click on it. You said smart, right? And so I think that, there's even in, sugar rush markets like we had been in for several years, and we'll frankly go back to at some point, being smart is still really important, right? Like making smart decisions, being precise about what you're investing in, being accountable before and after you do investments around where you're going. What are the ways that you do that? And what are some of your best practices for doing that, not just from a program standpoint, but from a finance standpoint, like working with your CFO, thinking about expenses, the budget that goes into it, being accountable to that as programs are rolling out? Curious how that works for you.
Yeah. So, it's so important to measure marketing impact by pipeline and really go beyond that to close revenue. We pitched a program to our CFO and CEO a couple weeks back, and we basically led with the numbers, because why are we doing this? Ultimately, why does marketing exist in the first place? We exist to support sales and driving revenue for the business. And so really having that and clear objectives and goals for a program is you're speaking their language, so that's really important. I think it's also important to get sales buy-in for what you're doing, because if you're pitching to the executive team and your head of sales is saying this program is going to help my team do better, right? That's another way to influence the CFO and help get things done. So I have found that's effective. And actually what I found really interesting in our group chat our group session we had a couple weeks ago now with other enterprise CMOs, was we don't use the term brand anymore when we're talking about campaigns. I can't remember the gentleman's name that said, no, it's integrated campaigns. And I thought that was brilliant, because you can't sell brand these days. It's more about like brand gen or integrated campaigns, and everything needs to connect, from the very top of the funnel down. So really using that kind of language, I think helps. And we always talk about things. What's the outcome we're looking for, yes, and how are we going to measure it?
It's amazing to me how many times marketers and even just smart marketing leaders go to the CFO and just present a list of things that they are spending money on, versus telling a story of what they are buying. And you're not buying marketing things, you are buying revenue events, you are buying business outcomes. And so there's a lot of different ways to do that. But Jim, if you see this from a lot of different marketers, like what are some other best practices for how just good sort of accountable CMOs are showing the impact of their marketing, not just after the fact reports, but up front in terms of where they're making investments?
Yeah, it's a great question, and Debbie, congratulations I'm impressed to hear that you guys are doing well, haven't been affected, no cuts. We ran a survey just over the last month in the CMO Coffee Talk community, and 92% of marketers have already had to cut their budget in 2024. Now, that community might slant more towards B2B and might be more tech, and clearly there's a lot of turmoil in markets for high tech. But we are seeing some impacts, and so it kind of, if you're in a market of constraint, if you will, then you need to really understand the numbers at a granular level, and that relationship between marketing and finance. You talked about the relationship between marketing and sales to sell programs, right? But you're selling it to often today the CFO, the office of the CFO. In order to sell those programs, you need to be able to speak in financial terms And while pipeline, yes, is awesome, and revenue, everything else, like a lot of time, you just really want to understand the financial return on each of the programs and then stack rank those. Which ones are we getting the best return? Every company, whether it was a growth play or not, or well-funded, whatever, is starting to act more like a public company these days, right? Where profitability and EBITDA and cash flow matters a heck of a lot more than might have mattered in the, what do you call it? Sugar rush. I love that. The sugar rush times. Sugar rush market. Yeah. So we're seeing a lot more, financial measurement around the investments. And of course that starts with like knowing the numbers, right? Like, so it's just, if you need to make every dollar count, you have to be able to count the dollars. That's kind of the way it comes down. And it is shocking how many marketers, even at the CMO level, just really don't have a line of sight into what's available in their budgets right now. Like, at any given time, it's like you're trying to land the plane in a fog. It's the best way to describe it, and we talk to customers and they're like, hey, marketers are really happy they came within 5% here, or 7% or 10% of their budget, and all of that adds up. Next thing you know, you're talking about a couple $100,000 that was not deployed in a time when you desperately need those resources.
Well, and what you're talking about here is not just sort of comfortability with the numbers, but it's also a strong relationship with finance, right? And so, Debbie, talk about the relationship you have with your CFO and the importance of not just, relationship, but also just sort of understanding each other and what you're trying to get done as a foundation for going and executing and having an impact.
Well, having a personal relationship helps, right? Like just, meeting. We have a new CFO who joined us a few months back, and we just met and sort of got to know each other just to start out, right? And where are we coming from? He wanted to learn about how we're doing marketing at Dynatrace then. And so we talked about that and his background and his perspective, where he's coming from. So, when he asks good pointed questions, it's like he's just seeking to understand. And, articulating our program and why we're doing it, it just always comes back to the objectives. And then, if it's and what the results are going to be, but he's also interested in, how is it going to connect with our target audience? And he's very interested in not just the numbers, but, the program itself and how we connect and how it's going to benefit sales, right? So it is the numbers for sure, but it's also the things around that and even some of the creative aspects.
Well, you just used the phrase "seek to understand," right? Like, I don't know what percent of system engineers become CMOs and heads of marketing, but I imagine not a lot of marketers end up as CFOs. And so you have, well-meaning people, who don't know our acronyms. Like, we invent so many different ways, unique ways of measuring our things. And so CFO sits in a meeting and says, what is SQMQ? What? And doesn't understand it. So like sometimes you mentioned earlier, so the language we use, what I'm buying for the business versus money I'm spending, but also like the language the CFO uses, like talk about the importance of being financially literate in terms of sort of some of the basics that the CFO understands. So you can literally speak the same language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's true. And we have really gotten away from talking about MQLs at the executive level, thankfully, because when I first came 2 years ago, it was more about volume. And so we have made that shift, which has been super helpful. Now, sometimes people want leading indicators, right? And so you need to show that you are going to be on track for that pipeline to generate, right? So, but when you're talking about it in that context, I think it's better received. But for softer metrics, for example, we do an annual brand study. That was something I wanted to come in when I came into the company to really measure that fuzzier thing. It's just like, what is our brand reputation? What are we known for? How do people think about us compared to the competition? And you can actually put numbers on that, and then you can see, and then you can run it every year. Are we doing better or are we doing worse? And that's the way, another way to communicate with the CFO about something that's really fuzzy. Brand.
Jim, in the work you do with enterprise CMOs, like what are some of your best practices for both the relationship as well as sort of the language and the communication between marketing and finance?
Yeah, well, definitely language matters. And even, you talked about speaking the same language. It's funny, we did a webinar, 2 weeks ago. And a big part of it was just pointing out the differences between the typical CMO and the typical CFO. They're very different people. They're motivated by different things. They have different personas, right, left brain, whatever it might be. Again, I would like to know how many system engineers actually become CMOs, but they're different people. And the next point was, and they actually speak different languages, right? Like the way that all of your marketing budget fits into a general ledger of accounts that businesses use to measure the financial health is like, it's just completely mismatched, right? Like, we have just one kind of category. It's just called consultants, and that just stick everything in marketing that has to do with consultants into this, please. Don't worry about like programs or customer marketing or demand gen or brand, or just all of that gets shoved in there. There's literally no alignment between typical marketing budget. And so sometimes to create that alignment, I think companies kind of force marketers to try and use enterprise planning management tools, which is really difficult to look at a marketing budget that way. But there is this disconnect. And frankly, one thing that gets in the way of that relationship is not having the Rosetta Stone, like not something that automatically translates such that, these systems talk to one another. Can you imagine, Debbie, can you imagine being a head of marketing and you need to drive revenue growth, and the systems that you use to execute marketing campaigns don't talk to where revenue is tracked? It's just insane. Like that idea that, that was the situation 20 years ago, it just blows my mind. Today, there is literally no connection between the systems marketing used to run the business of marketing and the systems that the financial team uses to measure the financial health of the business. There's not a lot of connection there. So that's a challenge that needs to be tackled quickly, especially, like I said, in a time of constraint where you're watching every dollar.
Yeah, for sure. We just got a few more minutes here in our first LinkedIn Live focused on enterprise marketing. If you have a question for Debbie or Jim, or have a comment, please throw those into the chat or the comments here at LinkedIn. We'll get to that. Thank you, Christine, Peggy Sue, Chris Lowell, and a bunch of others who've already are here watching, participating. Appreciate you very much. I want to go back to this concept of integrated marketing. Debbie, you talked about that as a way of sort of describing brand. And when I think of integrated marketing, I think about sort of this omni-channel approach, right? Across channels, and having some consistency and having a cohesive message and approach to prospects. Very much easier said than done in any organization, but I would imagine in an enterprise format, sort of breaking down some of those silos and creating that omni-channel integrated approach is really hard. How do you do that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, it kind of starts with, what are the pain points you're trying to solve for your customers? Which personas do you want to go after and really try to pull in? So from the very top of the funnel, everything from brand programmatic to paid search and paid social, what are those tools you're going to use to kind of draw people in? We're working on a campaign right now where there's like an advertising component, but we're driving to capture names. So create the MQLs that we then need to nurture, right? So there's the landing page. Then there's, as we start to think about what are the field programs that need to surround this? And then how are we enabling SDRs and the sales team so that when these are coming in, they know what the right messaging is to support that. So it's a lot of communication and enablement, and really getting people rallied around one thing. We've got a set of sales play where our fiscal year starts actually just the other day, April 1. So we're getting ready for sales kickoff. We have a set of sales plays we've refined since last year, and we're aligning the marketing campaigns to those so that everyone in marketing is aligned, and we're picking one to start with, right, for a top level campaign, and how do we bring that all the way down through, so that it kind of ensures that we're working with that we're aligned with sales by working around those sales plays, which are developed by product marketing with input from sales. It's an iterative process.
So that's awesome to hear. And I think there's plays and there's playbooks, and then there's implementation of that, right? And so you talk about, for lack of a better description, sort of the cultural implications of that. Like, how do you help an organization that, maybe historically, as you continue to drive that integration, has been uncomfortable working in silos, either across marketing departments or just marketing and sales? Like, how do you manage the people side of that to make those playbooks work?
Yeah. I mean, I think it starts with having a vision that that like our tagline is cloud done right, and I'll just use that as an example. So when at the very top level, it's cloud done right. Well, what does that mean? What does cloud done wrong look like? How do you start to carry that down to observability and application security and kind of the pillars that we have? Giving people kind of that framework for or a structure where we're working with, and so that they can see how they align to that is super helpful. And as I mentioned, it's really about that communication. So I think you need to have that global approach, but then the field teams out in all of the different geographies need to understand that they can leverage that and they can tune it for themselves in their geos. They can bring their local customers to talk about, to leverage them as proof points. Yeah. So it's kind of having that overall structure, but then some flexibility. So you don't seem like it does. So the people in the field marketers don't feel like corporate is pushing everything down on them, because they're helping sell it to sales as well. They're talking to sales every day.
Yep. Jim, you see this a lot internally and externally with your clients. What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really well articulated how the value of these playbooks, but I still see this tension between, if you think about the last, 5 years or 7 years, this rise of account-based marketing, right? And the inclination of the teams on the front lines, right? To focus on a narrow set of accounts. And that's really what's most important to us, and tailor everything to these narrow set of accounts, and evaluate everything about these accounts to understand what their motivations are and their business strategy and drive pains. And there's that. And yet the job of marketing to a certain extent is to make sure that you're covering broadly, like this is the idea of brand gen, covering broadly the marketplace so that you create a value prop among your audience, and also recognizing that we just talked about the world we've been in, 30-40% of your prospects in these accounts are going to turn over. They're going to go to another account. They're going to go to another account, right? So it's like there's this tension now between broad-based marketing efforts down to narrowly focused account-based efforts. And that's like a new thing that I think marketing and sales teams are navigating for sure.
Well, you just brought up something really interesting, Jim, that, if you're in B2B and you're selling into an industry, to a niche industry, your customers and prospects are likely going to go to another company in that industry. Maybe not, but the likelihood of you seeing those people again over and over again is important. So, I mean, Debbie, it speaks not just to how do we get this deal done, to how do we treat this customer? What's their experience like with us? What is the brand experience, and how does that halo help us turn that one deal into multiple deals over the course of lifetime careers, etc.?
Yeah, customer marketing is super important, and especially in a SaaS business where, people see their usage and, you want to demonstrate to them the value. The more they use it, the more value they're going to get. That becomes incredibly important. And in terms of account-based marketing, I actually like how Latney, the CMO of Sixth Sense, talks about it, ABX. Mm-hmm. So trying to get my company to talk about it in terms of ABX, AB everything, right? It's not just marketing. We won't be successful if we're not aligned with sales on their named accounts.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I tend to say we're in a post-ABM world. ABX is a much better way of saying it. But, it seems like several years ago, the term social selling was frothy and everywhere. I don't hear anyone saying it anymore. You know why? Because it's just part of selling, right? It's just the best practices of social selling are now just like core components of doing good selling. Like if you're in B2B, especially if you're in complex sales cycle, how can you not have an account-based approach to the way you go to market? Mm-hmm. So, I do think that has very much become table stakes. Is it making marketing harder? Is it making sales and marketing integration and that integrated marketing and integrated go-to-market approach harder? Yes. But is it also creating more efficient programs and more predictable outcomes? Absolutely. So we're at the bottom of the half hour here. We're going to try to keep these sessions at 30 minutes or a little less to get y'all back in your day. Debbie, thank you so much for your generosity and giving us some great insights. Appreciate it very much.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you so
Jim,
much.
Yeah, and Jim, we'll continue to do these. This is the first of a series of LinkedIn Lives. Appreciate you and Uptempo and your partnership and sort of really just reinvigorating the enterprise content. So if you are watching this and if you are a CMO or a head of marketing in a B2B company, especially if you are in an enterprise company, definitely we'll put a link into the comments to join the CMO Coffee Talk community. There's a specific subgroup in the community specifically for enterprise marketing leaders, robust Slack channel, weekly Zoom or monthly Zoom meetups, LinkedIn lives like these. Tip of the iceberg, Jim. We got a lot more coming up.
Yep. No, I'm looking forward to it. It's a great community. It's where I learn most of that. Where I take most of my lessons is from peers, so it's great. And don't forget this added benefit. It is a bit of a group therapy session as well. So,
oh, for sure. Hey, listen, like you want to learn about integrated marketing, brand, EBITDA management. Fine. Don't miss the rants channel is all I'm going to say. Like the rant channel is therapy on a daily basis. If I go on vacation, you come back from vacation, you got like, mountains of like emails and everything else to do. I save the rants for last because that is like, it'll be like a week or plus of just, you can't make this stuff up. It's amazing. Yep. So anyway, thanks everyone for joining us. Debbie, Jim, thanks for joining us. Look forward to seeing you all next time.
Thank you, Debbie.
Take care. Bye.